Great. If you want to start letting people into the Zoom side of this thing, we'll get started in just a minute here. Thank you all for coming today. All right, so we have several people that are starting to join us on Zoom. And as soon as we get the last of those folks entered, we will start the program. You give me the thumbs up when you're ready. They keep coming. Hi, everybody out there in Zoom land. We're getting you connected. All right. All right. Welcome to Horticulture Corner, Let It Rain. I'm Denise Reagan. I'm the Executive Director of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. And joining me from our staff is Corinne Lightfoot on the Zoom controls tonight. She's our Marketing and Membership Manager, and Morgan Pinks, who is our Operations Manager. She was checking you in tonight. And we have Jacob Senior, one of our event ambassadors, who's at the bar tonight. So if you haven't gotten a little refreshment for your evening pleasure, feel free to do that. I would like to recognize our chairs of the Horticulture Corner program. I think one of them is really sick and the other one is working today, so they both could not be here today. But Susan Painter and Mika Hardison are our co-chairs of the Horticulture Corner. They've put on a great series of programs throughout this year, and we want to thank them because we couldn't do it without them. I also want to recognize some members of the board who are here tonight. I see Julie Howard, who is currently our recording secretary, and we're happy to have her here tonight. And I thought I might have seen one other person. No, I'm mistaken. But so those are representatives from the Board of Trustees. And then if you're a member of the Garden Club, please raise your hand. Fantastic. Well, congratulate yourselves for being members. And if you're not a member of the Garden Club, it's never a bad time to be a member of the Garden Club. We would love to talk to you about it, either myself or Corinne or Morgan. Any of us would love to talk to you about the benefits of being a member of the Garden Club. So please do. I want to tell you about a couple of upcoming programs that are in the future. So our next Horticulture Corner program is on June 6th, and it is called Horticulture Corner Peace Labyrinth. You may not know, but there's a group called the Friends of the Labyrinth at Peace Memorial Rose Garden, and they're working to install a beautiful meditative path in an underutilized city park. They're a grassroots citizen committee that formed in partnership with the city and Riverside Avondale Preservation. And you're going to learn all about their efforts and this beautiful space that they want to create for everyone's enjoyment, just a few blocks away from here at Peace Memorial Rose Garden. So please join us on June 6th for that event. Coming up very soon as well, May 13th, just about a week and a half away, is our Wrap Garden Tour Day. How many people have been on the Wrap Garden Tour before? Yeah, it's a really cool thing. There's so many great houses that have been on this tour. We have more great houses coming up for this year's tour. And this year, the Garden Club is also on the tour. You can come to the Garden Club for free. We're not going to charge you, but if you want to be a part of the whole garden tour, they will ask you to pay. It's a $25 charge to see all the houses. I think there are 6, 7, maybe 8 stops. Or you can get a tour with Go Tuckin'. So you can start here at the Garden Club and take a tour, and they'll drive you to all the locations so you can see the whole thing. So if you're interested in the Wrap Garden Tour, please see our website, and you can buy your tickets directly from the link on our site as well. And then we have our annual meeting. It's kind of the end of our season of the Garden Club's programming. Don't worry, because there's lots more programs coming up throughout the summer. But our annual meeting is kind of our little state of the Garden Club, where we talk about what we've done in the last year. We have a little report from our treasurer, and we also have the official approval of the 2023-2024 Board of Trustees and all the officers. So we'd love to have you there. There'll be drinks and refreshments. It'll be a fun little celebration of the year. So please join us on May 16th. All right, now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Daria Wicks is a recently retired pharmaceutical researcher whose career focus has been on well-being, both our personal well-being and the well-being of our environment. During the last year to 18 months, she has worked to identify cost-efficient ways to improve our immediate surroundings and contribute to the well-being of our waterways. Through this work, she became interested in rain gardens as a way to enhance our surroundings and contribute to the improvement of our waterways. We couldn't be more thrilled to have her here with us today. If you have questions for Daria, sorry, I am like messing up your name so bad.
That's okay.
Oh my goodness, I tried so hard. If you have questions and you're here in the audience, we'd love you to hold them to the end. We'll have a microphone. We want to capture your question on the recording. And if you're on Zoom, we would love for you to put those in the chat so that we can pose them to her at the end. Okay, please help me welcome Daria Wicks.
Great. It was perfect that time. Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to come and talk to you about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, rain gardens. But before I actually get into the nitty-gritty of building a rain garden, I wanted to share some information with you about water in general. As you can see from this slide, water, globally, water is a lot of it is tied up in other things. For example, you can see from column 1 that there's a lot of salinated water. Almost, let's see, 97.4% of our water is tied up in salinated water. That leaves about 2.5% fresh water available for use. If you look at column number 2, that 2.5% is distributed mostly in permafrost and groundwater, leaving about 1.2% of available fresh water for use. Column number 3 shows you that 1.2% is distributed even further. So there's really essentially very little fresh available water for human consumption. Let's talk about that 1.2%. It's not distributed evenly across the globe. If you look at this slide, you can see that there are only 4 lakes across the globe, 2 in Africa, 1 in the US, and 1 in Russia, that have the bulk of available fresh water. That means that of the 195 countries across the globe, approximately 35 of countries have the bulk of fresh available water for drinking and growing. A little bit deeper, that means that about 1/5 of the world population is living in water-stressed areas. Each person living in one of those water-stressed areas only receives about 1,000 cubic meters of water a year. What that means is that people are drinking contaminated water. And that's kind of a sad situation to be in. Beyond that, already we're seeing water wars. Water wars in all of these countries have been documented, and they're conflicts that have to do country to country with access to undersea resources as well as access to fresh water. Oops. So I hope that helps frame in for you some of the urgency around taking care of the water that we can get our hands on, rescuing water, cleaning water, and making sure that whatever flows into our aquifers here in Florida is clean, fresh, available drinking water. The definition of a rain garden is really any garden that sits a little bit below the surrounding ground. It is specifically designed to absorb runoff from a hard surface. The plants in that rain garden actually purify water and send it back through the earth into our aquifers clean. Some characteristics of a rain garden. You can see we focus on native plants. It's generally planted in a natural depression in the soil in your land. It's designed to temporarily hold water generally not longer than 48 hours. Generally speaking, it should be dry most of the time. It should only really be wet post a rain event. It should not be thought of as a pond or a water retention area or a koi pond or anything like that. And like I said before, it should drain at the latest 48 hours after a rain event. Any questions? Okay, so why is that all important? As you can see from this slide, as rain falls onto a hard surface, it collects all these a lot of contaminants such as fertilizer, chemicals, oils, garbage, bacteria. All of those pollutants are washed into our waterways, rivers, oceans, ponds, etc. The EPA has estimated that 70% of water pollution is from rainwater runoff. It's something that we can do something about. The benefits of a rain garden the vegetation in the rain garden filters a lot of those contaminants out and sends clean water into our aquifers. It preserves native plants. It's pretty. It helps with pollinators. It is easy to establish and maintain, so you don't have to spend a lot of money. Once it's established, you don't spend a lot of money on it. It is thought to help with water bills, protect basements. We don't have a lot of basements in Florida, but in other areas, it protects basements and things like that. So, building a rain garden. The objective of a rain garden is to slow the water down, allow the plants to absorb it, and filter fresh water into our aquifers. So when you're trying to select a site, you want to try to put your rain garden on the downside of a slope. Does anybody here have a slope? I don't have a slope. Good. So it's downside of a slope, as close to the hard surface that you're trying to drain as you can. You should, there are two tests that are really important before you actually start some digging in for your rain garden. One is an infiltration test. The other is a ribbon test. One will tell you how fast water is going to be drained out of your rain garden. The other will tell you whether or not you need to amend your soil. And I'll talk about those in more detail in the next couple of slides. You should have, the base of your rain garden should be at least 2 feet above the water table. And you can find out where your water table is from the U.S. Geological Society. There's a local I'm sorry, you can dig a hole. U.S. Geological Society are the two primary places where you can find out where your water table is. The slope into your rain garden should be not more than 12%, so you don't want it very steep into your rain garden. Okay. You should stay away at least 10 feet away from a basement or foundation. Your rain garden should always be placed where you're not interfering with utilities. So as they say, call before you dig. Stay away from septic tanks, drain fields, well heads. Try not to interfere with trees, and that means you want your rain garden outside of the drip line of well-established trees. And you shouldn't be near any other water features, such as a retention pond. Okay, so the two tests that you should do on your soil before you actually dig your rain garden is this one, the infiltration test. You're gonna dig a hole about the size of a coffee can, fill that hole with water and wait. In an hour or so, when that water has permeated the soil around it, you're going to put some way to measure, like they say a popsicle stick, but I used a ruler. Put the ruler in the center, fill it again, mark where you fill the water initially, and then you're going to come back in an hour and measure again. Most resources that I used suggested taking several measurements over a couple of hours to see how well the soil that where you're going to place your rain garden percolates. If the water dropped a half an inch, you're good over an hour. If it dropped a quarter of an inch or less, you're probably going to have to either move your rain garden plan or do some soil amendments so that it drains well. And that's what that looks like. That's what an infiltration test looks like. The other test is a ribbon test. In the ribbon test, you're going to take soil from 4 to 6 inches under the surface and hold it in your hand. I use a spray bottle, and you're going to spray that soil in your hand until you can make a ball out of it. Then you're going to squish that ball, and try to make a ribbon out of that soil. And that looks like that. Okay, so if your soil never makes any kind of a ball and you can't ever make that, then you have too much sand. If it's 1 inch to 2 inches, you have a little bit of clay. You may have to do some moderate amending of your soil, but if it's 2 inches or longer before it breaks off, then you have a lot of clay in your soil, and you're probably either going to want to move your site or do more soil amendment. Okay, now we're ready. Now that we picked a site, it's at the bottom of the slope. It's perpendicular to that slope, and it's good filtration, good ribbon test, and we're going to build our rain garden. It can be as simple as directing water from a gutter into a place that you already have kind of water tolerant plants, which is what I did in my house. My roof drains down a gutter into a place that I already had water loving plants, and that was pretty easy. Essentially, you need to work with what you have. So do what you can with what you have. A good estimate for a rain garden is about 20% of the area or the hard surface you're trying to drain. So if you're trying to drain 100 square feet, like a patio, your rain garden is going to be 20 square feet. If it's 1,000 square feet that you're trying to drain, like a roof, like mine, it's going to be 200 square feet. Mine is 365 square feet. It was big. So a good, once you do that, you're going to look for a place that's flat at the bottom of your incline. You know, a lot of Floridians don't have any incline, so I don't have an incline either. I just dug the hole deeper and then made the water go there. The basin needs to be about 6 to 8 inches deep. And once you define the area that you're going to dig, you want to make sure you remove some soil about 12 to 18 inches beyond that so that you have an edge. Okay, so you're going to take all this extra soil and some stones, and you're going to create a berm on the downside of your rain garden. The bottom of the rain garden or the bowl should be flat, and it should be about 2 inches wide. And remember, you're going to have to establish where your water table is, so you make sure that it will actually percolate the way you want it to. Once you do all that, you want to make sure that the edge, the berm on the downside is stomped down, so it's very firm. And then you also may want to consider a spillway or an underground drain pipe. My rain garden didn't actually drain, and unfortunately I flooded my neighbor he had to have a canoe to get to his garage. It was bad. But I put a perforated pipe at the bottom of my rain garden, and it shunted into a storm drain in the street. So there are a lot of ways to mitigate your filtration. Like I said here, you can have an under drain. Once you get it so it's draining and you can see that everything is shunted in the right place, you're gonna want to start planting. This is a diagram of what a kind of a simple rain garden is. You can see that there's a French drain from the gutter that leads into the mitigated soil. Water drains into this sand, and it then filters into the local clean water. And you can see on this far side where the berm is. And this is what my rain garden looks like. I have a pipe that goes down into the soil and then out into the street because I do have a lot of overflow, and it's really sad when my neighbor canoes to their garage. Okay, so now we're going to plant. When you're looking at planting your rain garden, you want to make sure you have as wide a variety of species in your rain garden as you can. When they talk about trees here, they're talking about small trees. They're talking about under like 10 feet or under. So all of those short trees and shrubs are going to slow down the rain so that you have better absorption by the plants that are underneath. You want to think about tall grasses are going to be very good filters for your rain garden, and the shorter plants have very complex root systems, so they're going to actually help direct water into the ground so it can be filtered into the water aquifers. You have three distinct areas when you plant your rain garden. You have the edge, the slope, and the basin. In the edge, on the edge and around, you want to make sure that you plant native plants that are going to be able to tolerate periodic dry conditions. On the slope, you're going to plant plants that are able to tolerate wet sometimes, dry sometimes. In the bottom, in the basin, you want plants that are going to be able to tolerate a lot of water, even standing water periodically. So that then you're going to want to, once you get all those plants in place, you need to mulch or compost around all of those plants. Don't forget, we're focusing on native plants. They use nutrients better. They require very little fertilizer once established and very few pesticides. So in this presentation, I included a sun and a shade rain garden. This is the sun rain garden, and you can see from here, I included lists of plants. In the parentheses, I put Florida, whether they're native Floridian, native Florida plants, regional Florida plants, or not native plants that have been adapted to Florida. So you have some suggestions regarding plants for sun. And I also included a shade garden and some suggestions regarding plants that would be good for a rain garden that's in the shade.
And Daria, I assume that you will be okay with us sharing these slides on the blog afterward?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Absolutely. And anybody, I have
Just for anybody who was worried.
Yes, don't get worried. I'm going to share everything. Okay, cost of rain garden is going to be where you're going to put it, how much amendment you're going to do, what plants you put in there. But by and large, a self-installed rain garden shouldn't cost more than $3 to $5 per square foot. If you have a landscaper install your rain garden, it's going to be about $10 to $15 per square foot. The URL I have here for the Rain Garden Alliance has an amazing calculator. It's a huge resource for rain gardens. They have plants, they have calculators, they have how to amend soils. It's really an outstanding resource. And I would suggest if you're really thinking about a rain garden, that's a great place to consult. And here's some examples. This is a post-rain event rain garden. And this is another example of a rain garden, a well-established rain garden. Okay, rain garden maintenance. If you have been focusing on native plants for your rain garden, you're probably not going to have to do a lot of maintenance, at least after year one. You may have to replace some plants, do a little watering during droughts, maybe a little remulching, but by and large, once it's established, those plants are going to grow enough to outgrow weeds, so that after year one, there should be very little weeding as well. Some common problems: lack of drainage. As I said, with my rain garden, I had to put in an under drain. That's not a big deal, really. Clay and silt in your under drain. I just flush mine with the hose. I put it in one end and make sure that it's clear all the way to the other end. Sediment, you can use a sediment fence or a silt stock. And that's really only while the ground is getting reestablished after you initially installed your rain garden. I didn't have to do that. Took it all out after the first year, because everything was well established, all the plants were growing and everything was good. The last problem is that some people have big farm equipment or big excavators that do their rain garden. It compacts the soil. So you might have to loosen the soil to help it drain better. The downside is if it's not placed properly, you're going to increase erosion. The other thing, if it's too deep or too wide, you can actually have a big swampy mess in your backyard, which is what I had in year one. And that's when I put the drain in the bottom. So be careful about how deep and how well the soil percolates. There can be remulching, replacing plants, weeding in the first year, which is a little bit of a pain. But you have to remember one other thing is that over a couple of years, silt is going to build up in your rain garden. That silt is going to contain some of the contaminants that you were trying to filter out in the first place. So you want to make sure you have boots and wear gloves so that when you get all that silt out of there, you're not exposed to those contaminants as well. Okay. These are some additional resources for you if you're really considering your rain garden. Cornell University does a lot of work, UMass, Amherst, and there's a rain garden network. I would also suggest the University of Minnesota, who's done an amazing amount of research about plants and rain gardens and how they filter and what they filter. That's my contact information. If you want a copy of this or you want to ask me some questions, please feel free. And thank you very much. I have an appendix. I have additional plants that you may consider for your rain garden if you're really considering one. And finally, suggestions for soil amendment recipes that may be easier for you, like maybe you have leaf litter, or maybe you can have access to peat moss or whatever. So these are some additional soil amendments that are helpful for your rain gardens. Any questions?
All right, that's wonderful. Let's give Daria a little round of applause. And I'm just going to escape here so we can do the camera directly on you right now.
Oh, no.
And we'll take some questions. So, Corinne, if you can let them know that they can put their questions in the chat. And then if you raise your hand, I will come to you and give you the mic. Anyone? Oh, there's one.
Okay, so when starting anything, 2 feet is not always I'm not always brave enough to do that. So what is the smallest area that you could do a rain garden and have it be effective?
I have seen some be 4 by 3 feet, because the area they were draining was pretty small, like a driveway. Driveways are pretty small, so you don't need a big rain garden. You can also go a little bit deeper if you amend the soil. So I would do some infiltration tests in the area that you want to drain. And what I did was I did a couple of them around where I thought I was going to have to drain my patio. and made sure that it percolated, and that's how big I built my garden.
And then did you just do an underground pipe to get the water from wherever you're draining from?
Yes,
to the
I
rain
did.
garden?
It's a perforated, corrugated plastic pipe that sits at the bottom of, actually it's 2 inches below the bottom of the basin. And whatever doesn't, after 48 hours, if it's if it's not draining, then that perforated pipe will shunt all of the extra water into the street.
But that's how you got it via your gutter to your pond as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had my gutter under the ground. I directed it through an extension into the rain garden. And my rain garden is square, rectangle actually. And I have water plants here, then less water plants there, and then plants who can tolerate dry far from where I was draining my roof because I don't have a slope.
Thank you.
Other questions in the audience? All right. And then I think we have 1 or 2 that have come over on Zoom, so that'll give you time to come up with your own. All right. So we have, let's see. Pardon me. Oh, sorry.
Hi. Maria Garcia on Zoom asks, can I put my garden directly under my roof where the water makes a kind of hole in the ground near the house?
I think that's a little close to your foundation. So what I would do is I would put a gutter or a pipe extension down to the ground and move it at least 10 feet from where your house is. Otherwise, you're going to interfere with your foundation and it can cause some serious problems because if there's a way for a plant to get a root in your foundation, it will.
All right. Any questions from the audience? You have had a moment to think about what you wanted to ask.
I used to do all my digging and such myself when I was younger, but now I choose not to do so. And I was wondering if you have any references for a person who does this type of work that would work with me to design one, but they do the labor, who have knowledge of this type of drain system.
I'm so sorry. Technically, I'm not supposed to make direct recommendations, but I
Okay.
can say this. I have looked at local and regional landscapers, and there are 3 landscapers that you can find fairly readily that do rain gardens.
The father started the business and the son took over, and it seems like it's staying in the family. So I think the trail of knowledge is probably pretty good.
I would think so. I have had a lot of success with some local landscapers when I was consulting about, my poor neighbor canoeing to his backyard and where to put the pipe and how to put the pipe and what pipe to put there. They were all very helpful.
In my area comes from the neighbor, so I'm going to be going away from them.
Yes.
They come through my property, and I'm going to, like you say, do the best I can to avoid it going any further into the next neighbors.
It is. It's very thoughtful of you to do that, but it's not also so easy, right? Yeah, and look, they're pretty easy to find, the 3 or 4 that do this, and they're all really very helpful.
Other questions? Oh, there we go.
Yes, hi. I have a friend who she has a rental property and they just did a culvert. And I was thinking, can you do a rain garden in a culvert? It's like it's like a ditch basically, but to drain the driveway. So in order to make it interesting, could you not put a rain garden there in this ditch that's already going to be there anyway?
Exactly, you can. I would be careful about how it perks.
Okay.
how it percolates the water.
Yeah.
And I think I even have in my presentation, which you can see, one that is draining a driveway into a ditch. And amazingly, they built their rain garden into the incline.
Okay. Yeah, because the culvert is like the pipe that runs underneath the driveway to drain off, and then it's like the basin that they have. It's near the beach.
Yeah.
So they have to have these by code. But I'm thinking how to make it interesting, like why not put a rain
Absolutely, they
garden
can build a rain garden there. I would just make sure that when they do it, when they plan their rain garden, they do the infiltration test to make sure they're actually going to percolate water. The other thing is, in a lot of these culverts and stuff, they have a standing water. And if you can prevent that standing water, you're also going to decrease mosquitoes.
Yes, this is what I would think too.
Yeah.
So
Have you
It would
heard
be
of
a win-win.
BTI?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you heard of BTI?
No.
It's a mosquito disc, and I have some standing water in my area. It's a disc, it's about this big. And like I said, it's called BTI, and you can just put the disc there. It's a natural bacteria, and
Oh, okay.
these bacteria eat mosquito larvae.
Oh, wow. That's
So
good,
you
'cause
can
I'm-
just
I'm
throw
not
one of
into
those in there every
pesticides.
once in a while, and
Yeah.
it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to hurt bees or anything.
Oh, see, that I love. Yeah.
I even put it in like the pots that are under your potted plants,
Uh-huh.
those little dishes. I put a couple of granules in there because there's standing water there as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Sure.
What about the Cuban frogs?
Oh,
Is there an issue with their propagation?
but to be honest with you, with rain gardens, I have not had a lot of issues with Cuban frogs. When I have found in the 9 years that I've been here, I've had one in my rain garden. And I believe in euthanasia. Put them in the freezer and let them go to sleep.
Yeah, I've heard vinegar is an off-putting thing.
It can be, and it's not going to hurt the environment. But to me, whatever you can try to have them avoid where you are, it's a good thing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right, any other questions in the audience? All right, any more on Zoom? All right, well, what we have for you before you all leave, and I'm going to get our slides started back here again, is survey time, surveys. And perhaps you can help pass those out for us. So we have 2 surveys for you today. One is the Garden Club survey. We always want your feedback. So we really want to hear from you, and you can use your phone to scan this code and take the survey right now. We'll also send it to you afterward tomorrow, but why wait till tomorrow, which you can do today. But then also the Duval County Extension Office, UF-IFAS,
The green one.
has a survey. So it's 2 surveys is better than one. And so we both want your feedback, and it's really important for your organization.
Yes, I have to share with UF. So
Yeah.
the green one's really important.
All right. And if you would once again, please join me in thanking Daria for her knowledge and for answering all of our questions today.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you to everybody who joined us on Zoom. We're so happy to have you with us as well. And thank you for coming out tonight. And please come back. We have a lot of programs coming up, and we'll be here all summer as well with more Horticulture Corner. Thank you. Have a good night.